Washington's clear-thinking headquarters. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
737 on WMAL. Brian Neiman along with Mary Catherine Ham from the Daily Caller, joined now by Brad Garrett, former FBI agent, now the ABC News counterterrorism expert. Brad, there's been 4 incidents in the last, week on airplanes. A couple of people trying to open up the door as the plane is in flight. We had that guy from Chicago to San Francisco that was banging on the cockpit door, yelling "Allah Akbar." Had a whole bunch of post-dated checks, or had 2 post-dated checks for I think $13,000, and then there was another flight that was had to be diverted because I think of the word bomb was found in the bathroom. Is this just a coincidence, or something going on here? What do you smell?
I think it's a combination. Is it a reaction to Bin Laden's death? I would be willing to bet at the end of the day, if you interviewed all 3 of these people, they would say they were outraged about the death of Bin Laden in some form or fashion. It doesn't sound like they were planned. It sounds like individuals that just wanted to release their rage in an inappropriate way. They weren't armed. They were subdued by passengers. Will we see more of this? We may. But I'd much rather see this than I would the real thing. But I guess it is sort of predictable that you would get this reaction from some people.
Okay, so you think this is definitely in response to Bin Laden being killed?
I'd be, particularly the 2 guys trying to get in the cockpit,
yeah.
I'd be surprised if I don't know, obviously, that's not been released,
right.
But I guess I would be surprised based on the timing. And people do a lot of inappropriate things when they become outraged, and these 2 may fall into that category.
Well, and we seem to have these little flare-ups of airplane incidents. Is it more media focus on that in the aftermath of something like the Bin Laden thing that makes it seem like there are more, or are they really, there's really more incidents going on?
I think there probably are more, but also the airlines in particular are very, very sensitive. I mean, you have the situation of 4 Muslim clerics in 2 different flights trying to get to an Islamophobia conference, and 2 gave up and just drove, and the other 2, the pilots refused to fly them.
Right.
Even though they had cleared security and they had asked the passengers, do you have an issue with these 2 guys flying? And they said no. The pilot refused. So I use that as an example that the airlines are obviously very sensitized to this.
All right, we have, apparently there's Osama Bin Laden kept a diary. What do we know about this diary, these handwritten notes that he left behind?
Well, we know that he was obsessed and outdoing himself as far as a 9/11 attack. He wanted something bigger, a higher body count, and probably, at least to date, the most troubling aspect is that he's talking about moving away potentially from the obvious targets of New York, Los Angeles, Washington, and he's telling his followers to go out to targets, and this is my term, not his, softer targets, maybe in the Midwest, places that clearly do not have the level of security that some of the bigger cities may have, where you could kill potentially more people than were killed at 9/11. And so that is going to raise, I think, anxiety. There's nothing that I've heard yet that provides any detail. Is that just an idea of his? Are there people actively working on that? As far as plots, I don't know. But the U.S. will clearly stay on top of that possibility.
Given that, of course, we were not going to capture Bin Laden and question him, who is the best asset? Where's the most intel going to come from? Are we going to get access to his wives? What's sort of the best scenario outcome with the intel here?
I think the best scenario is being able to actually work the intel, from telephone numbers to possible addresses to, more importantly, who exactly was he communicating with and what plots are potentially discussed in those thumb drives and hard drives. That is going to drive, I think, a lot of what we do in the coming months, which will obviously have international connections with other law enforcement and intelligence agencies around the world. And you're going to see, I think, a lot more potential arrests. I wouldn't be surprised if you see more SEAL team sort of actions against other individuals that are clearly high on the al-Qaeda hit list.
All right. There's one thing for the SEALs to work in Afghanistan or Pakistan. What about here in the United States? If we find something out that's going on here, how do we take that down? I guess my another way to ask this is, we have Al Qaeda. We actually got Bin Laden, and that was a huge coup. But is Al Qaeda more of a threat, or is it this homegrown terrorists, the people that have been in here and may not have actually even had any connection with Al Qaeda in the past? What's the bigger threat?
I think it's a combination. The issue, obviously, with the homegrown is that we don't know the number. And the problem is when people operate alone, they become self-radicalized on the Internet, unless we're able to intercept them some way because of websites they're going to, or somebody comes forward and tells us about an individual that's talked about being radicalized and doing bad things in the U.S., they're the most troubling, although at the end of the day, they are not the ones that are going to cause mass casualties potentially, because they don't tend to have their act together as far as weapons, knowing how to use them, building bombs. Clearly they could learn how to do that. Mm-hmm. But yes, I think now it's going to be a combination of those folks and potential plots that they may uncover based on this new information.
All right, Brad. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Brad Garrett, former FBI agent, ABC News counterterrorism expert.